The email arrived at 9:12 a.m., just as the sunlight poured across Arman Qureshi's cluttered desk, illuminating the coffee stain shaped like a broken heart. It was short, cold, and devastating. His position had been terminated effective immediately. His responsibilities would be reassigned to a team of highly specialized experts. No thank you. No recognition. Just an ending. For a moment, the office around him blurred. The quiet hum of computers, the distant tapping of keyboards, the muffled conversations, all of it faded into a hollow silence. Arman stared at the screen, his reflection faintly visible in the glass, a tired man with sleepless eyes and a world of responsibility resting on his shoulders. He wasn't just losing a job. He was losing stability, dignity, and the fragile sense of security he had built for his 8-year-old daughter, Meher. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Wisdom Story House. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Arman didn't react immediately. He simply sat there, breathing slowly, as if sudden movement might shatter whatever remained of his composure. Around him, colleagues whispered. News traveled quickly in corporate spaces, faster than empathy ever could. Some glanced at him with pity, others with relief that it wasn't them. No one truly understood what this meant for him. He packed his belongings quietly. A worn notebook filled with years of strategies and ideas. A small framed picture of Meher smiling under a bright sky, her missing front tooth adding to her charm. A pen gifted to him by a former colleague who once said, "You don't just solve problems, Arman, you create people who can solve them." That sentence lingered in his mind as he walked out of the building for what he thought would be the last time. The heat outside felt harsher than usual, as if the world had decided to test him further. He didn't head home immediately. Instead, he sat on a bench across the street, watching the glass building where he had given 7 years of his life. 7 years of late nights, missed dinners, and sacrifices Meher never complained about but always felt. Arman wasn't just an employee. He was a mentor. A builder. A silent architect behind many of the company's rising stars. But in the corporate hierarchy, titles mattered more than impact, and visibility outweighed quiet dedication. When he finally returned home, Meher greeted him with her usual burst of energy, running into his arms as if nothing in the world could go wrong as long as he was there. Her laughter was a stark contrast to the heaviness in his chest. He smiled for her, masking the storm within, because fathers like him didn't have the luxury of breaking down. Days turned into weeks. Arman searched for jobs relentlessly, sending applications, attending interviews, facing polite rejections wrapped in corporate language. Overqualified. Not the right fit. We're moving in a different direction. Each phrase chipped away at his confidence, but he couldn't afford to stop. At night, after Meher slept, he would sit by the window, reviewing his old notes. Training modules he had designed. Leadership frameworks he had built from scratch. He remembered the countless hours he spent guiding junior employees, shaping them into confident professionals. Many of them had gone on to achieve great success. He never took credit. That wasn't who he was. Meanwhile, inside the company, the new experts began to struggle. The CEO, Rehan Malik, had made the decision swiftly, driven by numbers and external pressure. He believed specialization would outperform experience. He replaced Arman with a team of consultants, each brilliant in their own domain but disconnected from the human core of the organization. At first, everything seemed promising. New systems were introduced. Processes were restructured. Reports looked impressive on paper. But something was missing. The employees felt it. The cohesion Arman had built over years started to crumble. Communication gaps widened. Conflicts increased. Productivity dropped. The experts, despite their credentials, couldn't understand why their strategies weren't working. What they didn't realize was that Arman had never relied solely on systems. He understood people. He knew their strengths, their fears, their unspoken struggles. He didn't just manage teams, he nurtured them. Weeks later, a critical project began to fall apart. Deadlines were missed. Clients grew frustrated. The pressure mounted on the new team, and for the first time, cracks appeared in their confidence. One afternoon, during a tense meeting, one of the consultants hesitated before speaking. He admitted that the frameworks they were trying to implement felt familiar yet incomplete. He couldn't place it, but something about them seemed like a shadow of something greater. That's when another team member spoke up, her voice uncertain but honest. She mentioned a name. Arman Qureshi. The room fell silent. One by one, the realization spread like wildfire. Many of them had attended workshops, training sessions, or mentorship programs years ago. They had learned from someone who emphasized clarity, empathy, and adaptability. Someone who taught them not just what to do, but why it mattered. They had been trained by Arman, the very man who had been replaced. Back at home, Arman was helping Meher with her homework, explaining a simple math problem with patience and creativity. She looked up at him with admiration, the kind that only children can give so freely. In her eyes, he wasn't unemployed or struggling. He was her hero. And maybe that was enough to keep him going. The company's situation worsened. Clients threatened to withdraw. Internal conflicts escalated. Rehan Malik found himself questioning his decision, though pride made it difficult to admit. One evening, he reviewed old performance reports, searching for answers. That's when he came across Arman's records. Not just numbers, but feedback. Dozens of testimonials from employees describing how Arman had changed their approach to work, how he had guided them through challenges, how he had believed in them when no one else did. Rehan leaned back, a heavy realization settling in. He hadn't just fired an employee. He had removed the foundation that held everything together. Days later, a meeting was arranged with the experts. This time, the conversation was different. Honest. Vulnerable. They acknowledged their struggles and, more importantly, their limitations. They admitted that despite their expertise, they lacked the one thing Arman had mastered, connection. Rehan made a decision that night. Not driven by ego, but by necessity and, perhaps, a late awakening. When Arman received the call, he didn't know what to expect. He listened quietly as Rehan spoke, his tone noticeably different from before. There was no arrogance, no detachment. Just a man trying to correct a mistake. Arman didn't respond immediately. He thought about the sleepless nights, the rejections, the uncertainty. He thought about Meher, about the lessons he wanted to teach her, not just about success, but about resilience, dignity, and forgiveness. He agreed to meet. The next morning, as Arman walked back into the building, the same sunlight greeted him, but this time it felt warmer. Familiar faces looked at him with respect, even gratitude. The whispers were different now. Inside the conference room, the expert stood as he entered. There was no tension, only acknowledgement. They knew who he was. Not as a former employee, but as the person who had shaped their thinking. Arman didn't boast. He didn't remind anyone of their mistake. He simply listened. Because that's who he had always been. As he began to speak, calmly outlining solutions, bridging gaps, and restoring clarity, something shifted. Not just in the room, but in the company as a whole. It wasn't about replacing experts anymore. It was about understanding that true leadership isn't measured by titles or credentials, but by the impact you leave on people. Before the story ends, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever faced a situation where your worth wasn't recognized? Your voice might inspire someone else. The company slowly began to recover. Systems improved, but more importantly, people reconnected. The experts didn't step aside, they evolved. They worked with Arman, learning from him, respecting him. It became a collaboration rather than a hierarchy. And at home, Meher noticed the difference. Her father smiled more. He laughed more. The heaviness that once followed him had lifted. One evening, as they watched the sunset together, she asked him why he never gave up. Arman didn't give a long explanation. He simply told her that sometimes life tests you not to break you, but to reveal who you truly are. And he had learned that being replaced didn't mean being forgotten. Sometimes, it means the world hasn't realized your true value yet. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who needs a reminder of their worth. Your support means more than you know. Because in the end, Arman wasn't just the man who got his job back. He was the man who proved that real influence doesn't disappear, it echoes, quietly shaping the world, long after you've been overlooked.